The chamber of the Galactic Council stretched wider than any cathedral on Earth, filled with glowing banners of 100 alien empires, each more ancient than the history of humankind. The ceiling arched so high it disappeared into shadow, where hovering drones recorded every movement, every word, every breath. It was a place where decisions shook galaxies, where peace and war were shaped by a single raised claw, tentacle, or wing. But on this day, peace was not the subject. The council had gathered to discuss a minor world, a human colony called New Carthage, settled on the rim of known space. It had been attacked 2 cycles ago, reduced to ruins by the war fleets of the Vashtar Dominion. 20,000 humans had perished, burned alive in their cities as orbital strikes rained fire. The Vashtar delegate, a towering reptilian creature with scales like black stone, stood proudly in the center ring. Its voice hissed and rumbled. As it addressed the chamber, the humans were warned, it said. They expanded into Vashtar hunting grounds. They mined the asteroids we claimed. They refused to retreat. Their destruction was unfortunate, yes, but necessary. Murmurs spread through the council. Some nodded in agreement. Others shifted uncomfortably. The humans were not present in the chamber. Earth had not been invited. They had no seat, no banner among the stars. They are a primitive species, another delegate rasped. This one belonged to the Threx Confederacy, a spider-like being whose voice clattered like stone. They are fragile. They will complain, yes, but they will accept the loss. They always bend. The hall filled with low laughter, strange noises, of different throats and organs, yet not all shared their amusement. The Cathari ambassador, a tall and crystalline being who shimmered with refracted light, rose and spoke. You underestimate them, the Cathari said, its voice sharp as glass. They grieve their dead. They remember. If you believe humans will bow to this, you do not understand them at all. The laughter grew louder. The Vashtar slammed its heavy tail against the floor. Do you speak of vengeance? It sneered. The humans have no fleet strong enough to face us. Their weapons are crude. Their ships are frail. If they move against us, we will burn Earth itself. End of matter. The council drones captured these words, broadcast them to 1,000 systems. In the shadows of the chamber, observers took notes. Already, rumors spread beyond the chamber walls, but far from the council's shining halls. In the quiet system of Sol, humanity did not laugh. Humanity did not bend. On Earth, silence had settled after the news. 20,000 lives lost in a single day, families shattered. Children burned in their schools, colonists buried in rubble that had once been their homes. Images leaked back to Earth-scorched ground. Shattered ships, floating corpses in orbit. The world mourned. But grief was not the end. Factories that had been silent roared back to life. Shipyards that had lain dormant lit their furnaces. Mining stations worked without pause, dragging raw material from asteroids and moons. Every screen, every broadcast repeated the same phrase, we will not forget. From military academies to back alley workshops, humans began to prepare. Retired engineers returned to their stations. Veterans of forgotten wars volunteered again. Secret projects hidden in government vaults were opened, their blueprints dusted off. For years, humanity had been mocked as reckless explorers, curious children with fragile bodies. What the council did not know was that Earth had been preparing. For war, not for conquest, not for territory, but for survival. Humanity had never been the strongest, but they had always been the most determined. And this time, determination was enough. Whispers began to travel through the void. Patrol fleets of the Vashtar vanished near the rim. Outposts reported strange signals before going dark. Cargo convoys that once moved safely along charted lanes now found themselves hunted. Their escorts burned out of the sky. The council dismissed these as rumors, accidents, or piracy. Yet the whispers grew louder. At the edge of the Zorith Nebula, The Threx warship stumbled upon a sight it could not explain. An entire Vashtar destroyer drifting, cut into pieces as if by invisible blades. The hull bore no scorch marks from plasma or laser fire. It had been sliced open with surgical precision. No survivors remained. When the Threx officers reported the find, the council scoffed. Coincidence, said one. Sabotage, said another. But among those who had fought before, unease began to take root. Back on Earth, a message was prepared. It was not long. It was not complex. It was written in words all species could translate without error. The broadcast spread across the galaxy in an instant. A voice carried by every channel, every frequency, every relay dot. It said only this: "We remember the dead. We will answer." The council chamber fell silent when the message was played. Delegates turned to one another, uncertain. Some scoffed again. Some laughed nervously. Others, those who had studied humanity closely, shifted with dread. For the humans were not known for empty words. The Cathari ambassador whispered what many were thinking. They are coming. And indeed, humanity was, deep beneath Earth's oceans. Submarines once built for deterrence were torn apart, their cores repurposed for starship. Reactors, old weapons long thought useless, were reforged with new purpose. Research stations that had been ignored for decades now pulsed with light as breakthroughs once shelved for lack of necessity were given priority. The humans did not rush. They did not cry for mercy. They worked in silence, as if guided by one heartbeat. And when the first retaliation came, the galaxy would remember it for centuries. At the edge of Vashtar space, 3 mining stations went dark. At first, their absence was dismissed as equipment failure. But when a Vashtar cruiser sent to investigate also failed to return, the alarm spread. A week later, fragments of that cruiser were found drifting across the stars. They bore strange burns, black and jagged, the result of weapons no alien had ever seen. By then it was too late, for humanity had awoken, and once awakened, humanity did not stop. The Council would soon learn the truth. Earth's retaliation had already begun. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with noise. The humans' message still echoed across every screen and channel. Delegates shifted in unease. Some dismissed it as bravado, others feared it meant something more. But none of them truly understood what had begun. In a dark corner of the chamber, hidden from most eyes, observers from minor races exchanged worried glances. They had watched humanity rise faster than any species before. In less than 2 centuries, humans had leapt from primitive rockets to interstellar travel. And though their fleets were smaller, their speed of adaptation terrified those who paid attention. The Vashtar Dominion, however, was not afraid. They had struck the human colony of New Carthage without hesitation. To them, humanity was prey: fragile bodies, limited technology, short lives. They had crushed species stronger than humans before. Their leaders believed this would be no different, but whispers began to spread from the outer systems. A convoy of Vashtar ships failed to arrive at its destination. No distress signals were sent. When search parties finally found the wrecks, the ships were destroyed with precision, as though every weak point had been struck in perfect sequence. The damage suggested new weapons. Weapons none of the Council races had ever seen. The report was presented at the Council, and laughter filled the chamber. "Humans cannot build such weapons," declared the Threx representative, its mandibles clicking. "This is sabotage from another power. The humans are convenient scapegoats." But unease grew, for the attacks continued. A week later, a Vashtar fleet of 6 warships vanished near the edge of the Orion Arm. Only one vessel returned, half its crew missing, the survivors shaking with terror. Their accounts were scattered, confused, but one detail remained clear. They had been ambushed. Human ships had struck from the shadows, moving faster than expected, appearing where they should not be able to appear. Then came the weapons, piercing beams that sliced through shields, missiles that bent around defenses, drones that swarmed like living creatures. The fleet had no chance. The lone survivor's voice trembled as he told the council, They did not fight for conquest. They fought to erase us. To make a point. The chamber fell silent, but the Vashtar delegate slammed its clawed hand against the table, scales glinting in the light. Lies. Humans cannot defeat 6 of our warships. They are weak. Their ships are fragile. This is a fabrication to spread fear, many agreed, but the reports continued to pour in. And each one spoke of the same truth: humanity was no longer defending. Humanity was retaliating. Back on Earth, leaders did not celebrate. They did not gloat. Their faces were grim as they watched the names of the dead scroll across their screens. The 20,000 lost on New Carthage had become the soul of the war. Every factory worker, every pilot, every engineer worked with a single purpose: vengeance. On the lunar shipyards, massive vessels were assembled, ships with armor layered thicker than any before, bristling with railguns and plasma cannons. Designed not for intimidation, but for annihilation. At Mars, drone factories ran without pause, producing machines that could swarm enemy ships like hornets. Beneath the ice of Europa, research stations tested weapons forbidden by the Council: dark energy lances, neutron warheads, electromagnetic pulses capable of frying fleets in seconds. The humans broke no laws, for they had never signed the Council's treaties. They had been excluded, mocked, left outside the Great Chamber. Now they played by their own rules. The first official retaliation came at Vashtar Outpost 47, a fortified base guarding a key trade route. It was manned by 3 heavy cruisers and supported by planetary defenses. For centuries it had been considered impenetrable. The attack lasted 12 minutes. Sensors failed as human jammers filled the sky with false signals. Defense cannons fired blindly, striking nothing but empty space. Then the human fleet appeared, sleek ships of iron and fire, moving in perfect silence. They did not roar. They did not broadcast demands. They simply fired. Railgun rounds tore through cruisers like paper. Missiles detonated inside shield bubbles, shattering them like glass. Drone swarms swirled through the void, cutting through hulls and engines with merciless precision. When the attack ended, Outpost 47 was gone. Not captured, not damaged, gone. A smoking ruin drifted in orbit. No survivors remained. The galaxy trembled. For the first time in centuries, a rising species had struck directly at a council member and left no survivors. The message was clear. Humanity would not be silenced. Inside the council chamber, panic grew. Delegates shouted over one another, demanding explanations, demanding action. Some called for negotiations with Earth. Others demanded a full-scale war to crush them before they grew even stronger. The Cathari ambassador spoke above the noise, its crystalline body glowing with refracted light. "You do not understand them," it said. "They are not like us. They do not fight for territory. They fight because you killed their children. And when humans fight for their dead, they do not stop." The chamber fell silent again. Even those who mocked humanity felt the weight of those words. Meanwhile, among ordinary citizens across the galaxy, rumors spread. On distant worlds, people whispered about the humans, fragile creatures with short lives who fought like demons. When provoked, traders began refusing to cross human space. Colonies near Sol closed their ports. Fear spread faster than warships in the Dominion. The Vashtar High Council raged. They had expected a quick war, a simple crushing of a minor species. Instead, they were losing fleets, outposts, convoys. Their pride blinded them, but even they could no longer deny the truth. Humanity was fighting back with terrifying strength. Still, the Vashtar prepared to escalate. They rallied their grand fleet, hundreds of warships, massive battleships bristling with weapons, carriers that could launch thousands of fighters. They would march into Sol itself and burn Earth to ashes. But even as they prepared, humanity was already moving. In the asteroid belts, hidden bases launched stealth fleets designed to strike supply lines. On the far side of Jupiter, secret stations tested faster-than-light drives, stolen from alien technology and remade with human ingenuity. At the edge of the Kuiper Belt, massive carriers waited in silence, cloaked by darkness, ready to strike. Humanity did not wait to defend. They hunted. And as the first wave of the Vashtar Grand Fleet entered human space, they found not a weak prey, but a predator waiting in the shadows. The battle that followed would change the galaxy forever. The first wave of the Vashtar Grand Fleet slipped into human space with confidence. Hundreds of warships advanced in perfect formation, their engines burning bright, their banners shining across the void. For centuries, the Dominion had crushed every rival they faced. They believed this would be no different. But the moment they crossed into the Sol frontier, the void itself betrayed them. Their sensors blinked with false readings. Asteroids appeared and vanished on their maps. Phantom fleets registered one moment, then disappeared the next. Communications grew distorted, filled with static that sounded almost like human voices whispering. The fleet commander roared orders, but his voice carried through channels thick with interference. The trap had already been set. Hidden among the rocks of the asteroid belt, human fleets awoke. Ships slid from the shadows, engines cold until the moment they fired. Missiles streaked from craters. Railguns ignited with thunder. Drones, cloaked in the darkness of the belt, swarmed like locusts, slicing into hulls before alarms could sound. The Vashtar screamed across Kums as their first line shattered. Shields flared, then collapsed. Armor split open like fruit. Cruisers spun into silence, their engines torn away. Battleships tried to respond with plasma fire, but their cannons struck empty space. For every human vessel destroyed, 3 Vashtar ships fell. The council chamber across the galaxy received the first reports with disbelief. No one had seen the humans fight on this scale. No one had expected them to stand against the Dominion's pride. And yet, the impossible unfolded in real time. The humans did not fight like other species. They did not engage in predictable lines, did not retreat to regroup, did not waste time with declarations. They struck with silence, precision, and ruthless efficiency. Every ambush was calculated. Every shot was meant to kill. The Vashtar commander tried to rally his forces, calling for a retreat to regroup outside the belt. But as the fleet pulled back, the second trap snapped shut. From the shadow of Jupiter, carriers rose. They had been hidden for weeks, waiting for this moment. Their hangars opened, unleashing storms of fighters and bombers modified with stolen alien tech. The tiny craft darted like hornets, weaving through massive battleships and striking engines, weapons, and reactors. The retreat turned into chaos. Within hours, half the Vashtar fleet was gone. Entire squadrons vanished in bursts of light. Command ships fell silent. Survivors screamed across channels as their vessels broke apart. And at the center of it all, the humans remained cold, calm, relentless. Earth did not celebrate this victory. It was not enough. 20,000 were still dead on New Carthage. As news of the massacre spread, the galaxy trembled. On neutral worlds, alien citizens whispered about the humans. Traitors refused to cross anywhere near Sol. Council members, who once laughed at humanity, now sat in silence, their faces pale. And the Cathari ambassador, shimmering with cold light, said only one thing. They warned you. They said they would answer. Now you see what that means. But the Dominion was not yet broken. The Vashtar High Council, furious at the humiliation, gathered what remained of their pride and declared holy war. They called upon every colony, every soldier, every factory. They would not rest until humanity was crushed beneath their claws. The council tried to intervene, but the Vashtar ignored them. And deep inside, many council races feared the truth. They wanted the humans destroyed too, but none dared admit. It allowed. Back on Earth, preparations continued. Mars shipyards produced dreadnoughts at a pace never seen. Lunar factories turned out drones in endless waves. Hidden labs beneath Antarctica tested weapons that bent the laws of physics. Humanities. Leaders did not dream of conquest. They dreamed of ending the war once and for all, but the humans also knew they could not stand alone forever. Quiet envoys reached out to other species. Not to the council, not to the great empires, but to the oppressed. Races who had suffered under the Dominion's claws for centuries listened to the humans' message. Some responded. Smugglers carried crates of alien technology into human hands. Rebel cells whispered their loyalty. On distant moons, oppressed peoples painted the human sigil across walls. Seeing Earth as a symbol of resistance, the galaxy had seen rebellions before, but none had carried such weight. For the humans did not fight for empire. They fought for justice, and that justice resonated like fire in the hearts of the broken. The second great battle came weeks later. Near the frozen dwarf world of Eris, the Dominion had sent a second fleet. Larger than the first, determined to erase humanity's defiance. This time, they came prepared. Their ships carried new countermeasures against drones. Their shields had been reinforced. Their commanders studied human tactics carefully, but humanity had changed again. When the Vashtar fleet arrived, they found not human ships waiting in ambush, but silence. The space around Eris was empty, still, abandoned. Confusion spread through their ranks. Then the stars themselves turned against them from the dark. Massive beams of energy lanced out pure white fire that cut through shields and hulls in a single strike. Dozens of ships exploded at once. The Vashtar scrambled, trying to locate the source, but their sensors found nothing. The weapons came from nowhere, from everywhere. What they did not know was that humanity had deployed its newest creation, gravity. Lances, weapons that bent the very fabric of space, tearing warships apart like paper. The technology had once been theory. Now it was real, and it was devastating. The Dominion's second fleet collapsed in less than an hour. Survivors fled, abandoning their posts, their honor, their mission. Humanity did not chase them. They let them run, carrying stories of terror. Back to their masters. In the council chamber, panic erupted. This cannot continue. One delegate shouted, "They must be stopped," another cried, but none dared to volunteer their fleets. None dared to stand where the Vashtar had fallen. The humans had become something more than a nuisance. They had become a storm. Back on Earth, leaders debated their next move. Some wanted to strike the Dominion directly, to shatter their homeworlds and end the war. Others urged patience, to let fear spread, to break their enemy without risking humanity's survival. But among the people, the choice was already made. The war had become personal. Every human carried the weight of New Carthage. Every factory worker, every pilot, every soldier whispered the same vow: never again. And so, fleets gathered once more. Ships bristling with weapons no alien had ever seen. Carriers filled with drones like swarms of metal locusts. Dreadnoughts armed with gravity lances. Humanity prepared not just to retaliate, but to strike at the heart of their enemy, the galaxy. Held its breath, for the next strike would not be defense, it would be vengeance. The Vashtar High Council roared with fury as the news of their second fleet's destruction spread through their empire. Generals pounded their claws on war tables, priests screamed curses toward Earth, and citizens watched in disbelief as once glorious fleets returned in fragments. The Dominion had never known fear, but now it tasted bitterness for the first time. On Earth, the skies above the lunar shipyards glowed with endless fire. Massive dreadnoughts, larger than anything humanity had ever built, drifted from dry docks. Like titans reborn, Mars churned out drones in waves, swarming through space in practice drills, their wings of steel blotting out the stars. Factories across Earth's continents thundered day and night, filling the void with weapons designed only for vengeance. Yet humanity was not blinded by rage. Behind closed doors, their leaders spoke in whispers. They knew the Dominion was preparing. A final strike, one so massive it would either erase humanity or doom the Vashtar forever. The humans chose not to wait. They would carry the war to the enemy's doorstep. When the first human fleets left Sol, silence followed them. No triumphant speeches, no broadcast to the galaxy. Only quiet determination, as though the dead of New Carthage marched with them through the void. The Dominion soon felt their presence. It began with raids on supply routes. Convoys of fuel tankers and ammunition haulers vanished, their escorts left drifting in ruins. Then outposts along the rim of Dominion space went dark, communications cut mid-sentence. Patrols reported strange shadows flickering in the void, human ships moving too fast, too silent, appearing where no fleet should exist. The Dominion screamed for vengeance, but panic brewed among its people. For the first time in generations, their empire trembled. The council chamber shook with chaos as reports arrived. Some delegates demanded unity against humanity. Others begged for negotiations, but no one acted. No one dared to move their fleets, not after what had happened to the Dominion's armadas. Fear held them still, and in that silence, humanity struck deeper. The assault on Vashtar Prime's outer colonies came without warning. 3 human dreadnoughts, escorted by fleets of drones, fell upon the world of Sharala, a jewel of Dominion industry. Its defenses had stood for centuries, its shield arrays considered impenetrable. But the gravity lances fired, bending the fabric of space itself. The shields cracked like glass. In less than an hour, Sharala burned. The humans did not occupy it. They did not enslave it. They left nothing but ashes. The message was clear. Every life lost on New Carthage would be answered in kind. The galaxy gasped out across distant stars. Oppressed races began to rise. They had watched humanity defy the impossible, and now they lit their own flames of rebellion. Miners on forgotten moons turned their tools into weapons. Colonists long bent beneath Dominion claws whispered the human vow, never again. The Dominion fought to crush these sparks, but for every rebellion silenced, 2 more rose. Humanity had become more than a foe. It had become a symbol. Still, the Vashtar were not finished. In the shadow of their homeworld, their final fleet gathered. Larger than anything the galaxy had seen in centuries, it carried the weight of their pride, their fury, and their desperation. Battleships the size of cities. Carriers armed with swarms of fighters. Siege engines capable of cracking planets. In half, the humans knew it was coming. Their scouts had already seen the armada mustering. And so, humanity prepared for the greatest battle in their history. Every shipyard in Sol poured out steel. Every scientist worked without sleep. Every soldier swore their oath beneath the flag of Earth. And when the time came, humanity's fleet left their cradle behind, marching toward the Dominion's heart. The council chamber fell into silence as they received the transmissions. Human fleets moving beyond their borders, advancing toward Vashtar Prime itself. Some delegates whispered in awe. Others trembled in fear. The Cathari ambassador simply said, "This is not war, this is judgment." The battle began at the gates of the Dominion's home system. The Vashtar Armada spread across the stars like a storm. Thousands of ships filled the void, their weapons glowing, their banners bright. The humans arrived in silence, their smaller fleet dwarfed by the Dominion's numbers. To any observer, it looked like suicide. But then the humans moved. They did not charge recklessly. They did not scatter in panic. They advanced with precision, their formations tight, their weapons coordinated. And when the first shots fired, the void lit like a second sun. Gravity lances tore through the Dominion's front lines, ripping battleships in half. Drone swarms darted between carriers, cutting engines and reactors with surgical precision. Railgun rounds thundered through the void, striking targets kilometers away with deadly accuracy. The Vashtar fought back with fury. Plasma storms shredded human frigates. Missile barrages cut swaths through drone swarms. Human ships exploded in bursts of fire, their crews lost forever in silence. But for every human vessel destroyed, 3 Dominion ships fell. The battle raged for hours. The void filled with wreckage, drifting bodies, shattered banners. The humans did not retreat. They did not falter. They fought with the fury of a species that had been wounded to its soul. And slowly, impossibly, the Dominion began to break. Carriers fell silent. Battleships drifted powerless. Command ships sent desperate calls for reinforcements, but none came. The humans pressed forward, their dreadnoughts blazing with unstoppable fire. At the heart of the armada, the Vashtar flagship loomed, a vessel larger than any human city, armed with weapons capable of leveling worlds. It unleashed storms of plasma, tearing through human ranks. Dozens of ships died under its wrath. But the humans had prepared for this. From the shadows of the battle, a single human vessel broke formation. Sleek black, built in secret on the hidden stations of Europa, it carried a weapon no alien had ever faced. It charged through the fire, its hull burning, its engines screaming. And when it reached the flagship, it fired. The weapon was not plasma, nor missile, nor railgun. It was a singularity charge, an artificial black hole, born of human genius and desperation. The blast tore the flagship apart, dragging its massive frame into the void. The Dominion armada faltered. Their pride, their symbol, their greatest weapon gone in a single strike. The humans pressed forward, merciless, relentless. One by one, the Dominion's fleets collapsed. The void grew silent once more. And as the battle ended, the humans stood. Victorious, their fleets scarred but unbroken. The galaxy held its breath, for Earth had not only survived, it had struck down an empire. And the Galactic Council, watching in silence, finally understood what it meant to provoke humanity. The ruins of the Dominion's armada drifted across the void like a graveyard of steel. Thousands of shattered hulls floated silently, their banners torn, their engines dark. For the first time in living memory, the Vashtar Dominion had been defeated in open war. Their pride was broken, their fleets burned, their command shattered. But Earth did not stop, even as human crews mourned their dead. Even as wreckage was cleared from their hulls, the fleets pressed deeper into enemy space. Humanity knew the Dominion would not yield easily. They had ruled for centuries through terror and cruelty, and such empires did not collapse with a single battle. The march to Vashtar Prime began. Human dreadnoughts advanced like titans, flanked by swarms of drones and escorted by cruisers bristling with weapons. Behind them followed supply ships, refueling stations, and repair docks carried on mobile platforms. It was not just a fleet, it was an invasion. Every world they passed trembled. Outposts abandoned their flags and fled. Colonies that had once raised the Dominion's banners now painted human symbols across their walls, welcoming the invaders not as conquerors, but as liberators. For generations, they had lived under Vashtar rule. Now they looked to humanity as a new hope. The Galactic Council watched in silence. Delegates who once mocked humanity now whispered in fear. Some argued for intervention, to stop the humans before they destroyed the balance of the galaxy. Others urged caution, knowing that to stand in Earth's way was to share the Dominion's fate. The Cathari ambassador, glowing faintly in crystalline light, spoke only one sentence: "The age of the Dominion is ending." But on Vashtar Prime, the rulers of the Dominion refused to believe it. The High Council gathered in their obsidian fortress, their claws scraping the floor in rage. Generals shouted for retaliation. Priests demanded holy vengeance. Even as their fleets burned, they swore the Dominion would never kneel to humans. They ordered the activation of ancient weapons long forbidden, weapons buried deep beneath their oceans and deserts, weapons capable of destroying entire planets. Human spies intercepted fragments of these plans. When the reports reached Earth, the decision was made: Vashtar Prime must fall, and it must fall quickly. The invasion began with fire. Human fleets launched, wave after wave of strikes against the Dominion's border worlds. Gravity lances tore open defenses. Drone swarms silenced planetary cannons. Railguns cracked fortresses apart like glass. Within days, the outer colonies were reduced to ashes. Survivors fled toward the core worlds, carrying tales of human vengeance with them. But humanity was not merciless without reason. On worlds that surrendered, they spared civilians. Supplies were shared. Medical aid was given freely. To the oppressed peoples of the Dominion, humanity became more than warriors, they became saviors. The Dominion tried to twist this mercy into weakness. They spread propaganda, claiming humans only spared planets to enslave them later. But the people knew the truth. They had seen the human fleets pass by without chains. They had watched Earth soldiers fight not to conquer, but to free. And so rebellions exploded across the Dominion. Entire planets rose against their overlords. Armories were stormed, banners torn down, governors dragged from their thrones. The Dominion's strength collapsed from within, even as human fleets pressed from without. Still, the Vashtar fought. The Battle of Karith was one of the bloodiest of the war. A Dominion fleet twice the size of the human force stood its ground. At the gates of their core systems, the void lit with storms of plasma and fire. Dozens of human ships burned. Thousands of drones were shredded. But the humans refused to break. A single dreadnought, the Uns Vigilant, charged through enemy lines, its hull cracked and burning. It rammed the Dominion's command ship head-on, tearing both vessels apart in a storm of fire. The sacrifice shattered the enemy's formation, and the humans pressed forward, leaving Karith in ruins behind them. The galaxy watched with wide eyes. The humans were no longer simply retaliating. They were dismantling an empire. And finally, the march reached Vashtar Prime. The Dominion's homeworld loomed ahead. A vast planet of black oceans and jagged continents, its skies choked with warships and its orbit ringed with defensive platforms. It was said no enemy had ever breached its defenses. Armadas had been shattered against its walls. Empires had died trying to take it. The humans came without hesitation. Their fleets spread across the system, carriers unleashing storms of drones, dreadnoughts charging their gravity lances. The Dominion responded with fury, unleashing their forbidden weapons, spears that ignited stars, plague bombs that turned soldiers into dust, world crackers that could tear moons apart. The void became held out. Human ships burned by the dozens. Drones vanished in waves. But still, the humans advanced, step by step, kilometer by kilometer, refusing to retreat. Every ship lost carried the names of new Carthage's dead in its heart. Every pilot whispered the same vow before their final breath: never again. On the surface of Vashtar Prime, cities shook as orbital strikes rained down. Citizens cowered in their shelters, watching the sky burn. For the first time, they realized the truth: the Dominion was not invincible. And as human dropships descended, carrying soldiers in steel and fire, the people of Vashtar faced a choice: die with their rulers or surrender to a new future. In the council chamber across the galaxy, silence reigned. No one dared to speak. No one dared to intervene. They could only watch as humanity brought an empire to its knees. And when the first human flag was planted on the black soil of Vashtar Prime, the galaxy understood Earth's retaliation was not just vengeance. It was the birth of a new power. The sky above Vashtar Prime burned red. Human dreadnoughts hovered like steel titans, their gravity lances carving through defense platforms that had stood for centuries. Drone swarms blotted out the sun, tearing through enemy fighters in. A storm of fire and steel. Below, cities trembled as shockwaves rippled through the soil. The Dominion High Council screamed from their fortress. Their banners still flew. Their priests still chanted of divine victory, but the truth was carved into the heavens. Humanity had come, and humanity was not leaving. The first human soldiers touched the black soil of Vashtar Prime at dawn. Drop pods screamed through the atmosphere, slamming into fields outside the capital city. Hatches burst open and armored. Troops spilled out, weapons gleaming in the firelight. They did not roar. They did not chant. They moved with silence, their faces hidden, their eyes fixed on the fortress ahead. The Vashtar met them with fury. Waves of reptilian warriors charged across the plains, their claws gleaming, their plasma rifles blazing. For centuries, these warriors had been feared as the fiercest in the galaxy. But against the humans, their roars broke against walls of iron. Shields deflected their fire, railguns cut them down in lines. Drones dove into their ranks and tore them apart. The battle raged for hours. The plains outside the capital became a graveyard of steel and blood. Human squads advanced step by step, never breaking formation, never retreating. They fought as one, their movements precise, their fury controlled. Every step forward was a message. Earth does not stop. Inside the city, the people of Vashtar watched from their towers and shelters. They had been told humans were weak, fragile creatures of bone and soft skin. Yet now they saw soldiers who fought like storms, who burned through their armies without hesitation. And for the first time in their lives, many of them began to doubt the words of their rulers. The Dominion High Council ordered the release of their forbidden weapons. Towers rose from the ground, humming with unstable energy. Orbs of crackling. Light soared into the sky and burst, tearing apart chunks of land and sky alike. Human ships burned. Entire platoons vanished in white fire, but the humans did not break. From orbit, the dreadnought Iron Resolve fired its singularity cannon. A black tear opened above the battlefield, sucking the Dominion's towers into nothingness. The Forbiddens. Weapons vanished, their lights snuffed out in silence. When the smoke cleared, the humans were still advancing. The capital city walls trembled as the human army reached their gates. Explosives tore open steel doors. Squads stormed the streets. Drones crawling along walls, fighters screaming overhead. Block by block, the city fell. In the fortress, the High Council panicked. They had never known defeat. They had never imagined enemies marching into their capital. Now, with human forces at their doorstep, they screamed at one another, arguing whether to fight to the death or beg for mercy. But humanity offered neither. The fortress gates fell before sunset. Human soldiers poured inside, cutting down guards with precision fire. Corridors filled with smoke and fire. The High Council chamber shook as explosions thundered above. When the doors burst open, the Vashtar rulers found themselves staring down the barrels of human rifles. No words were exchanged. The humans did not demand surrender. They did not shout victory. They fired. The High Council of the Dominion died where they sat, their banners burning behind them. And with their deaths, the Dominion collapsed. News spread like wildfire. Across the galaxy, oppressed peoples rose in rebellion. Governors were dragged from palaces, banners were torn down, chains were broken. The Dominion's empire, built on fear and cruelty, fell apart in weeks. But the galaxy did not rejoice for long. For as the smoke settled, one truth became clear. Humanity had not only avenged New Carthage. Humanity had shattered the balance of the galaxy. The Galactic Council met in silence. No laughter filled the chamber now. No mocking words were spoken. Delegates who once called humans weak now lowered their eyes. The humans had crushed an empire older and stronger than themselves, and they had done it with ruthless efficiency. Whispers filled the chamber. Some feared humanity would continue, carving out their own empire from the ashes of the Dominion. Others believed Earth would step into the Council itself, demanding a seat not as an equal, but as a master. But the humans sent no diplomats. They broadcast no speeches. Their fleets did not march on new conquests. Instead, they began to withdraw. Their ships returning to Sol, their soldiers to Earth docked to the Council. It was a mystery. Why stop now? Why not seize the galaxy while all were too afraid to resist? The Cathari ambassador answered the question with quiet words. They never wanted conquest. They wanted justice. And they have found it. Yet even as humanity withdrew, fear remained, for the galaxy had seen what Earth could do. They had seen humans adapt, innovate, and strike with fury unmatched. And though humanity spoke of peace, no one could forget the sight of Vashtar Prime burning. Back on Earth, the dead were honored. Monuments rose for New Carthage, names carved into stone that reached the sky. Families wept, soldiers saluted, and leaders stood in silence. The war was over, but its memory would never fade. Factories slowed, shipyards quieted, weapons were stored, yet no one on Earth believed it was truly the end. Humanity had shown its power, and the galaxy had watched. There would be consequences. On distant worlds, new alliances formed in secret. Some saw Earth as a protector. Others saw it as a threat. Old rivalries stirred. Plans were whispered. The Council debated endlessly, but no agreement was reached. Fear clouded every word, and so as Earth buried its dead and rebuilt its colonies, the galaxy prepared for what came next, for humanity had not simply answered the Dominion's cruelty. Humanity had stepped into the stars as a force the galaxy could no longer ignore. And though Earth's fleets had withdrawn, their shadow lingered. Every empire, every council member, every citizen who looked to the stars now asked the same question. What will humanity do next? The galaxy was quiet in the weeks after the fall of the Vashtar Dominion. Too quiet. Trade lanes that had once thrummed with ships lay half empty. Colonies that had shouted with rebellion now whispered of uncertainty. The Galactic Council chamber, once a theater of laughter and arrogance, had become a hall of silence, every delegate speaking in careful tones. At the center of that silence was Earth. Humanity had withdrawn its fleets, but their shadow lingered over every star. They had not claimed territory. They had not planted flags on conquered worlds, yet their presence was felt everywhere. They had destroyed the most feared empire in living memory, and they had done it without hesitation. That fact alone reshaped everything. Across the galaxy, the common people told stories of humans. Miners whispered of soldiers who fought like storms. Merchants spoke of fleets that appeared from nothing and vanished just as quickly. Children played games pretending to be human soldiers, fighting against impossible odds and winning. Humanity had become a legend, but legends bring fear as much as admiration. Inside the council chamber, old empires debated in hushed voices. The Threx Confederacy demanded that Earth be placed under heavy restrictions. They claimed humanity's weapons were too dangerous, their ambitions too unknown. The Hulari Union argued the opposite, that humanity must be invited into the council at last, for leaving them outside had created the war in the first place. The Cathari ambassador stood in silence, its crystalline body shimmering faintly. When it finally spoke, its words rang like glass breaking. You still do not understand them. Humanity does not ask. Humanity acts. That is the truth you must accept. And indeed, Earth did not send envoys to beg for a seat. They sent no ambassadors, no delegations. Their fleets patrolled only their own borders. Their factories rebuilt their colonies, and their people mourned their dead. Yet even in their quiet, they were louder than any council voice. Far from the chambers of politics, small worlds began to act. Colonies freed from the Dominion sent messages of gratitude to Earth. Some offered resources, others offered soldiers, all seeking protection under the shadow of humanity's strength. Earth accepted little of it, but their refusal only made the offers stronger. For many, the humans had become more trustworthy than the Council itself. On Vashta Prime, the ruins of the Dominion's fortress still smoked. Human engineers walked among the wreckage, dismantling weapons, destroying war machines, burying the dead. They found no glory in their victory, only duty. To them, this was not conquest. It was closure, but vengeance leaves scars in the cities. Of Earth, parades were held for returning soldiers. Families wept as names of the fallen scrolled across great screens. Monuments rose for the lost of New Carthage, for those who had died in the void, for those who had given everything to see the war ended. Yet beneath the celebration, unease lingered, for humanity knew the galaxy was watching. Reports came daily of fleets training in secret. Empires who once mocked humanity now built new weapons in panic. Research stations hummed with experiments designed to counter gravity lances, to outpace drones, to resist singularity cannons. The humans had changed the rules of war, and now everyone raced to catch up. Some whispered that another great war was inevitable, but humanity did not prepare to conquer. Instead, they prepared to endure. Their fleets grew stronger, their colonies more fortified, their technology pushed further than ever before. They had shown the galaxy their strength, but they knew strength alone would not guarantee survival. In the council chamber, fear turned to desperation. Some delegates pushed to unite against Earth, to form a coalition strong enough to contain them. Others laughed at the idea, remembering how even the mighty Dominion had fallen. No unity was found. Fear fractured the chamber as surely as fire had fractured the Dominion. And so Earth stood alone. Yet humanity was not without allies. Small races once silenced by the Council now sought the humans' ear. They offered loyalty not through treaties, but through trust. For the humans had fought not for conquest, but for justice. And that justice resonated across the stars. In the years that followed, whispers became louder. Entire sectors began to speak of a new order, one not ruled by the ancient empires, but by those who believed in survival, in defiance, in freedom. And always, at the heart of those whispers, stood Earth. The galaxy would never again see humanity as fragile. On the anniversary of New Carthage, Earth broadcast a single message across every channel, in every language. We do not seek war. We do not seek conquest. But if you strike at us, if you burn our homes, if you kill our children, we will answer. Remember this. Remember New Carthage. Remember Vashtar Prime. Remember Earth. The council chamber fell silent when the broadcast ended. No delegate laughed. No empire mocked. The words of humanity carried the weight of fire and steel, of graves and vengeance, of a truth written in blood across the stars. And so, the galaxy entered a new age. The Dominion was gone. The Council was weakened. Humanity stood at the center, not as rulers, not as conquerors, but as a warning carved into the fabric of the cosmos. To strike at Earth was to invite annihilation. And the Galactic Council, stunned into silence, finally understood. They had never been ready for humanity.